Welcome to this Women's Day special of Investors Hangout, brought to you by Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund and Value Research. I'm Rachel from Value Research, and with me is the CEO of Value Research, Dhirendra Kumar. Welcome, Dhiren.
Thank you.
Empowering women to invest. That is our topic for today. Now, Dhiren, a lot of women in India, they do play an important role in saving and managing the finances of their homes. So what are your observations on this, and does this carry forward to investing as well?
I don't know about investing. Of course, in the old times, it did. But yes, I find them to be more sensible savers, careful spenders, and mostly, they are also able to create the finest emergency fund. And some of the old time, I have come across many instances are the way I have, looked at mothers and grandmothers, the way they contributed to or saved their money, or around the time of demonetization, I experienced them based on my interaction with people around me. I found that, they were extremely good savers, and they were able to build savings or sometimes carefully keep things which can turn out to be the most desirable or the highest quality of emergency fund. The preference for gold, or when I look at families with their houses, I think ladies at home had a major say in build-up of that asset, because you started something, you started aspiring for something, a shelter, for which you never had the resource. So I find them to be, great savers, sensible in their attitude to spending. I don't know about investment. Olden times, the contribution to the home building, that has turned out to be, nice investment as well. But I don't know in future about money. I think, I don't think they're at any disadvantage. They are just, as vulnerable or as naive or gullible as men. Just that, in modern times, with the financialization of the investment world, I think they have less say in the whole thing. They don't have, or they're not asking too many questions. Not that they have any disadvantage or advantage, because I find men to be doing, stupid or smart thing as, as women. So, I don't think it's an equal world. But just that they are less exposed. It is reflected in the usage of at Value Research Online. Before this program, I was trying to look at the analytics to figure out how many women do it and use Value Research, and it's just about 14%.
All right, so as Dhiren points out, women do indeed tend to be prudent managers of their money. However, when it comes to investing, as the data sadly points out, they tend to take a back seat. Now, Dhiren, if you could tell us a little about what are the benefits that, women can get from investing. Like, how can investing help them in their lives and, really empower them? I know it's cliche to talk about women's empowerment, but how can investing...
I would like you to answer this. But because, however cliched it be, you will have a better experience, or, you'll be better positioned to answer that. But, I can just tell you one thing which I have, because I have been in the investment advice, or not advice, but, I've been looking at investments closely, and a lot of people turn up to seek my opinion. And some people have been very actively involved in, I try to help them, and I really work hard, because investing is more of a habit. Savings is not investment.
Right.
Your money remains constant. In fact, it declines in value just because inflation keeps going up. So the worth of your investment money lying in the locker, it goes down in value over time. So if you don't put it to work, it loses its value. I had one unusual and a very inspiring experience, and which happened over a long period of time. I came across a situation where, somebody was investing in the name for his maid, some 200-300 rupees, and that carried on for 1 or 2 years, which would have been, in those days would have been 5-10% of the monthly salary which he was paying, but in a hidden manner, secretly. It was possible to, just get one signature, and possible to invest for somebody else. That carried on, and it got periodically revised. After 6-7 years, the rules changed. And then that was the time when that maid had to open the bank account, because it was not possible for somebody else to invest in somebody else's name. It became the law. So that is the time when she became aware that something has been invested in her name periodically over a period of time, and that has accumulated to a sum of something like 6-7 lakh rupees. And that turned out to be so empowering for that person, for that maid, for that lady, that next week onward she came for the household work, and she said that, as it usually happens, that, a person in the lower strata, the husband will be a drunkard once in a while and will be beating the wife. Her biggest achievement, because she did not touch the money. She did not consume it. She did not withdraw it. Just that the fact that she had the money, which she had never imagined or dreamed of, having that skill, it gave her so much of confidence that the beating stopped. The husband cannot beat her, and that was something, So financial empowerment is the only empowerment which women need, if at all they need empowerment. If everything else is hollow.
All right, Dhiren. So we've spoken about, the fact that women's participation tends to be really low in investing, and also about the very real gains that they can enjoy from investing. But if you could now talk about, the question of why women tend to not invest. So what are the particular hurdles they're facing? I mean, men invest all the time, even when they don't know very much about it. But what's stopping women from doing that?
No, not necessarily, in the top echelons or, the people who are getting into jobs themselves. They are forced to, think about it. And most girls, they start their career and they're forced to think about it. And some of them are sensible. I don't think, it is a very discriminatory world. Okay. Ladies or, male or female, they are just as stupid or smart, depending on who they are. And sometimes you come across smart people who do stupid, financial decisions. But I would say that conventionally, traditionally, a housewife will not be involved in the money matters. And she will just be entrusted with the savings or the income to be spent in course of time, and she'll be able to save something out of it, out of her own prudence. Generally, I think it is not to be attributed to male or female, but I think it has to be attributed with the complexity of our financial system or the products which investors experience. Things are necessarily being made complex. There is so much of emotional appeal. The toxic product, they look very appealing, and the not so toxic product, the good products, transparent things, they don't look interesting, or they are being sold in a manner which is like a story which is very difficult to understand, or it's not being correctly told. So I think it's a mixed bag, but I would say that, of course, the patriarchal society, men tend to control the resources, and but I think as we see that the big change, women are working. Initial years, they are just they just might have an equal income stream coming into the family. So I think things will change, but also there is something psychological about financial stuff. We come from a society where being frugal or being poor was glamorized. So a lot of people, actually, I come across a lot of people who take great pride in being financially stupid, or they claim to be financially stupid, that I don't worry about money and I don't care. That's not smart. I don't think that is something to be proud of.
That's true. All right, Dhiren. So, Dhiren, you've often spoken about how investors can educate other investors. Now, when it comes to women, do they have a very special role to play in getting other women on board as well?
Yes, if you actually know somebody, if you actually know something, if you have been able to build some framework of, doing things better, or you understand things better, I think at Value Research, I would always encourage that you are the privileged one. Spread the word. And spreading the word itself could be very empowering. It could provide, because many a times a lot of people think that, if you have to help somebody, you have to do some tangible help. This is an intangible help which will go a long way, and somebody will thank you. And I can tell you with great pride that the biggest bonus of running Value Research is that's a huge income when you have, thousands and thousands of people periodically write that how they achieved success with small inputs from us. I think that is something which doesn't show in our balance sheet.
Thanks, Dhiren. Now, what if I'm a woman who's watching and I'm now convinced that I must invest and I want to start? How do I get started? What are some concrete steps I can take today to get started investing?
money that start anyway. Because the biggest problem of investing is that, we take very long to start. But before that, I would like to give the same framework. Women or men, they have the same problem. And the financial framework that you have to follow, that have your emergency fund. Scale of emergency fund, women can actually, be more prudent in estimating that. Buying that health insurance, all your savings and investment plan will go haywire if you have not thought about it. And then deciding, the kind of money that you should have in your bank account or a liquid fund or, not so risky investment, which is generating modest return, but which you need in a predictable future, 2 years time, 3 years time, child getting into school and, you need that money. So all that, little bit of planning. And all the money which you don't need for 5 years and more, do nothing. Just do your long-term SIP. Choose one equity fund, even if it is not the finest equity fund, because we keep getting stuck and we find excuse how not to do it. Besides that, I think, the preliminary thing which everybody should be doing is, resisting the temptation to spend the money, because, investing won't start till you have the saving. And saving little more in initial stages, when it has all the time, it compounds beautifully. Time actually does the magic for your compounding. And once you have that, trying to understand between, a tempting expenditure, a consumption, as compared to, something which is essential. Of course, you need money to spend on variety of things, essential consumption, necessary things. Something which might look like a luxury to somebody but could be essential to you. So I'm not saying to compromise on that. We earn money to make a decent living or a dignified living or comfortable living too. But beyond that, I think one just need to be careful with those temptations that we have. And in this age, it is very difficult, because wherever you go and you look at a big ticket purchase to be done, which is consumption, which may not be necessary, but you have easy credit available. Sometimes you go somewhere and you find that something is worth 70,000 rupees, but it is not claiming that it is 70,000 rupees. It tells you that it is 4,300 rupees per month for 12 months or something like that. That makes it very tempting. People are tempting you, they tempt you to spend. Resist that little bit, and I think your investment and initial years of little resistance will translate into far greater financial independence, well ahead of time. So if you have done these 3-4 things, investing your long-term money regularly, be at it, having the health insurance, having your emergency fund, you are taken care of.
All right. Thank you, Dhiren. So for those watching who have never invested before and who want to get started today, do also visit Value Research online, where we offer plenty of resources, tools and articles that can help you along the way. We now move on to the Q&A round of this session. So our first question comes from Prachi Solanki, and she says, I teach in a private school and earn about rupees 30,000 a month. Do I need to buy life insurance separately for myself? My husband already has a cover of 50 lakh.
If you think, 50 lakh rupees is good enough for your family to be adequately supported, or it can, 50 lakh is good enough to support your family just in case your husband is not around, then it's fine, because, one has to look at buying life insurance as buying protection for your family for an eventuality. But I would say that, you're earning 30,000 rupees. If it is meaningful money for your family, which supports, and if you're not around, then I think, you should also have a term cover.
Okay. Our next question comes from Shipra Srivastav, and she says, I'm 26 and currently work as a market research analyst. I have an outstanding education loan of rupees 10 lakh, and I'm usually left with a monthly surplus of rupees 5,000 to 7,000. Should I continue to accumulate this in my savings account with an objective of prepaying my loan, or should I invest it elsewhere? The interest rate is somewhere around 9%.
Interest rate of 9%, but what is your obligation? How often you are supposed to pay? You need to just revisit your terms of loan. It will be a good idea to, if you just let it accumulate in your savings bank account, it will not earn, it will earn anywhere between 4 to 6%, which is not good enough. which means you should try and, if you are going to keep it in your savings bank account, might as well periodically repay your loan. If you want to really carry on with your loan and accumulate your money in a manner which will generate higher return than what your interest on the outstanding loan is, then you should invest in equity or a balanced fund. Do that but for that you need time. For that you need 1, 2, 3, 4 years at least to do that. If you have 5 years and more and you can defer your repayment of loan during that period, maybe you should consider doing your SIP for 5 years, and maybe you will have more money to repay, because the differential between 9% and the rate of return that you earn on your investments will be your extra gain.
Alright, our next question is from Lata P. And Dhiren, she wants to know whether there are any mutual fund schemes specifically for women.
There are, for marketing and branding purpose, there is a Mahila scheme, or there will be some such thing, but don't fall for that. Any investment which you make and you decide that you are doing it with a purpose, you are doing it with a time frame. If your fund, there is no special disadvantage or advantage of, investing in such funds. So don't fall for that. Choose a good fund, choose an appropriate fund, and that's about it. That's your scheme. Everything is available and accessible to you too.
Alright, Surmeet says, I have just retired and have a corpus of rupees 40 lakh. Where do I invest this in order to get a regular income?
Different ways of deriving regular income, and it depends. Is it going to be the only source of income for you? Then you need to deal with it differently. Is it going to be a supplementary source of income for you? You need to deal with it differently. The way I normally suggest is that you should be targeting some regular income which should not exceed 6% of your accumulation. So 6% of 40 lakh is the only amount which you will withdraw, and there are different ways of configuring this 40 lakh rupees. If this is going to be your primary source of income in your retirement, then your first 15-20 lakh rupees should get into senior citizen savings scheme and post office MIP. Remaining money can actually get into something like a balanced fund. So your overall asset allocation will also be more conservative, because half of your money going into fixed income, which will generate guaranteed income, that remains the base, and you will be very sure of that. And they are reasonably high yielding. They are high yielding, at the same time absolutely safe. Rest of the money you are taking chances. It's little volatile, but because this money has to last for a long time, and it should also, all your investment should be done in a manner that you are able to generate return which is and you are not consuming all your returns, so that there is some money left which can support a higher income and increase of your capital. So if you continue spending that, the income from that 20 lakh rupees, overall I think it will turn out to be about 6-7% return.
Okay.
And this money can lie there for next 4-5 years. This money will appreciate to an extent that it can support higher income in future. So this is the way to do it. The thumb rule is that not withdraw more than 6% of your money, and any higher return will lead to increase in your capital, which can support higher income, which is a necessity as need for income in your retirement.
Right. Ankita writes in to say, I have received rupees 20 lakh in a divorce settlement case. I want to keep this money aside for my 5-year-old son's higher education. So where do I invest this money, Dhiren?
5-year-old for a goal which is 15 years away, or maybe 13 years away. It is a very important money for an important goal, but still far away from the real goal. So you can take some measured risk with this investment, so that it's very meaningful. 20 lakh rupees might, and the inflation of the cost of education is dramatically higher than what we have experienced. Of course, it may not remain that way in future, but what I have seen in the last 25-30 years is that it's dramatically different. The configuration of education cost of education has changed completely. Right. So I would say that 2 rules to follow: invest in a balanced fund if you have never invested in market, or invest in an equity fund if you have little experience of that. One important rule which I think you should never violate is that don't invest these 20 lakh over the next 2 months, 3 months or at one go. Definitely spread it over the next 18 months to 2 years, because it's such an important money. Averaging the money is important to reduce the risk, even if it amounts to losing some opportunity.
Right.
Because catching a market high and waiting for it, and more so for in your state of in this context, will be very disheartening.
Right. All right. Nidhi Singh writes in and she's asking, I have already collected 50% of the price of the car, and I want to take a loan for the remaining. So should she do this?
I have a very basic rule when it comes to generally, whether one should borrow to for a consumption or borrow to build an asset. The only thing, there are 2-3 situations in which borrowing money to buy something will justify. One is the home loan, because it is such a big ticket purchase that buying a home, and also it's a long-term borrowing, which and it costs lower interest rates, and you get some tax benefit too. So in that sense, you are buying an asset which will appreciate, you will start consuming, and also it helps you save the rent. So the equivalent of the interest, if it is saved by way of rent, that actually justifies spending that. Second kind of borrowing, which you don't have a choice, is an emergency. You don't have money and you have an emergency, you have to borrow, you can't do anything. The other is borrowing money for doing essential thing, not necessarily an emergency. If this car will help you do your job better, then it is actually an input to the career, input to you doing your job better. So in that sense, it will enhance your efficiency, it will lead to superior career prospect and all that. Otherwise, if it is aspirational spending to buy a car so that you can feel happy about it and also use it sometime,
then no.
Then defer it. And if it is little bit of input, by all means go ahead and have it.
Right. All right. Our next question comes.
The rule is very straightforward.
Right.
You'll be buying an asset which will depreciate.
Right.
And you'll be incurring interest on that. So unless it is an input to something which will help you earn more or do better,
there's no point.
It's a spending, and normally spending should not be backed by any kind of borrowing.
All right. Our next question comes in from Rashmi Jain, and she says, I want to invest rupees 2,500 every month for the higher education of my 4-year-old daughter. So which investment option would you recommend?
2 things, first time investor, balance fund. There's no difference for a daughter by a mom. That is what my suggestion will be to a person who is investing for his 4-year-old child, irrespective of the gender. So one is that start with a balance fund if you have not done before, if it's going to be your first investment, and after 2-3 years move to equity fund.
All right.
The other thing which is not solicited as a question, but I would say that 2,500 rupees a month is a good start, but try and increase it every year. Don't think in terms of constant.
Right.
The result will be dramatically different and impressive.
Okay, Manisha writes in to say, I want to start investing, but there are so many articles I read every day about mis-selling practices in the investment industry. So how do I invest without, ending up taking the wrong investment?
The basic rules of investing, which I told you.
Right.
Follow that which of the 3 buckets your investment is falling into, and 2-3 other rules to follow. When investing in equity, never invest at one go. Never mix investment and insurance. So if you have this, handful of rules, which you will not, make it, write it down and write it down as non-negotiable rules. If you follow that and you ask question. Also, the good thing, Manisha, is that today it is possible to do everything yourself. If you have an Aadhaar card, if you have an online bank account, then you can resist being missold anything, because you can do everything yourself. If you want to buy your term insurance, do your comparison and go to the insurance company's website and buy it. If you want to buy a mutual fund, choose a good mutual fund, spend some time, 15 minutes at most at Value Research Online, and go and buy the direct plan. You will not only escape anybody selling something to you, you will also be able to save some money. So if you want to be self-guided, thoughtful, and you think you have the wherewithal, otherwise too, if you are going to an intermediary and if you are asking these questions, you are unlikely to be missold anything.
Thank you, Dhiren. We have one last final question from Ranjana Iyer, and she says, I have received a sum of rupees 10 lakh and I won't be needing it until 7 to 8 years. So where do I invest this?
If you're frozen about 7 to 8 years is a time when you should have some exposure to equity, and depending on the experience, you have 2-3 ways of achieving having that equity exposure. If you are a very scared kind, then go for an equity income fund. 7-8 years, it will give you a little more return than reasonably more return than a all fixed income alternative. Plus, it will also not create some kind of havoc with your in the interim. It will not fall freely if the market gets turbulent. We don't have a 50-50 option, so ideally, generally I would suggest somebody to have a 50% equity, 50% debt. That will give you a nice experience for 7-8 years. And for somebody little venturesome, go for that, erstwhile balanced fund, that hybrid equity oriented funds. Choose one fund. Important thing is that 10 lakh rupee, don't invest at one go. Spread it over the next 1 year so that, for next 7 years, it will be at work.
We've now come to the end of this program. Thank you so much for watching. It's goodbye from Dhirendra and me, Rachel.